Les damos la bienvenida a la segunda sección de este seminario online y queremos agradecer a los auspiciadores de este segmento. Banco de Chile. En Banco de Chile encuentras los productos que tu negocio necesita. Crédito agroflexible, leasing y seguro agrícola. Contamos con un equipo especialista en agro para potenciar tu negocio. Unitec. Unitec es un grupo internacional líder en la clasificación
of external and internal quality of terrace that offers an answer in 360 degrees throughout the quality process of this fruit, thanks to technological intelligent solutions and automated ones. Terry Vision 3.0 and unique cherries developed totally by R&D. CMPC. Here we are committed with our customers, trying to become the leaders of innovation, products and services that provide packing solutions. We start with a panel, which is made up, or as you can see or know, by a dream team of the industry. Very balanced also. So we're very happy to be able to have you here. Thank you for your time and morning. And we have a national and international industry connected right now. Cristian Tagle, please. Darren Matschull, connected. We can see him right now, but he's looking at us. Huang, Manuel, José Alcaino, Jessica Rodriguez, and Orieta Ramirez is joining us also, and Mario. Orieta has a license in trade in University of Champañá, ex-Catholic University of Cuyo, Argentina. She lives in Chile since 1996. She started working in Frusan, where today she's the general manager, position she performed since January this year. Congratulations. In 2018, Orieta won the Wacolda Prize granted by the Association of Exporters, ASOEX, as a recognition for women who have contributed importantly to the industry. Also, Mario Edwards, a commercial manager of Agrofruta. He's a commercial engineer from Universidad Católica with an MBA from the same. He joined Agrofruta in 1993 as finance manager and then in 2010 as commercial manager. And we cannot leave aside Jessica Rodriguez. She's an agronomist of Universidad de Chile, master degree from the Catholic University, and works in her first stage in quality and orchard areas, and then works in the Catholic University, where after some years she starts as a post-harvest advisor and R&D in species like cherries, kiwi, grapes, blueberries, and pit fruit. Welcome. Just give me a second. Let's start the panel. First question, and I will make a brief introduction and then we will address different aspects. In April this year, we held a webinar that is very similar to this one. We were affected by the pandemic. We were all we met virtually. And Claudio Vial then posed, based on an excellent analysis, that Chile would export in 2025 between 130 and 150 million boxes. And potentially we could conclude the decade reaching 200 million boxes. Considering the development of other markets requires time, and that China will be our main market from here on, and the 70 million boxes that we exported this season will be the minimum volume or the new normal for China, or from there on. I would like to ask Cristian, it was posed that this is like a multinational due to the many millions exported by of cherries and its potential. However, it's a multinational with multiple heads that requires coordination and joint work, very different. It's easier in a transnational when we have one CEO or a general manager. In this case, we don't. As industry, how are you preparing to face this growth? And also, is there any strategy for growth, a strategy in which you all agree as a group, as an association, as exporters and producers of terry?
El volumen, el micrófono. ¿No tiene encendido el micrófono el señor Tagle? Okay. Strategic fundamental pillars. First, to reinforce this muscle that we have, and reinforce or strengthen 4 pillars. Reinforce, defend, build new markets, and delve into or go deep into larger markets. Reinforce quality. We are working in a committee of the quality to improve the quality in the cherry committee. Reinforce promotion, reinforce everything that is product consistency. That is about reinforcing. Defend relates to phytosanitary condition, which is one of the fundamental strategic pillars of the complete entire national fruit industry. Third, to build, and this is key. We need to build new market. We need to expand the market where our presence is minimal and the consumption potential will be able to grow. And finally, to go deep. Go deep. We need to be more, to have more impact and influence in such markets in which the size of the market is so, the business is so big that we need to have a different approach, a different strategic view. These are the 4 pillars that in which all of our activities are supported. In the words that you repeated, reinforce, defend, build, go deep. The focus will be considering the volumes that apply essentially to China, with some influence in curd, basados en lo que Cristian está mencionando, de que debemos crecer en la China y, por supuesto, desarrollar nuevos mercados. Pero China seguirá siendo
I would like to ask you, based on also what Manuel, José, Alcaino presented, and Darren, China can grow, but how much can it grow, China?
Hi, Gustavo.
Hola, Gustavo.
Hello.
Sí, hola.
Are you asking me for this?
¿Me estás preguntando a mí, Gustavo?
Yes. Everybody's listening.
Well, I would like to ask you first. Do you know how many cherry does China produce now every year?
I don't know, but I have a hunch.
Well, the number is 1 million tons. That is 3 times of the production of Chile now produced. And China does not export. So all the Chinese who make cherry are all consumed in China. So I think you don't need to worry until you reach that number. And what you need to worry actually is how you can pick and pack and send the cherries to China. That is more to worry than how much cherry the Chinese market can absorb. The only problem is what kind of return you can get. When you have like 1 million tons, you cannot expect the price like you only have 1/3 of the volume, right?
I understand and I agree. Cristian, basado en lo que dice Kurt, que hay un potencial bastante grande todavía con
very
respecto a
big
China,
potential
pero entendiendo que
as for China, but we are under a very complex scenario due to the COVID-19. With a new year, which is close to the harvest, more cost of material, lack of containers, larger logistic cost, the super cycle of the cherries it's in crisis? Do we reach the top? What is your opinion, or your own opinion, personal opinion, or as committee? I don't know if say crisis, but it's a natural evolution that we need to have as an industry. Understand that this growth cannot be sustained if we do not learn about problems, the issue of the pandemics and every single impact or consequences, quality that plays a fundamental role last season, and diversification. We can deal with these three issues in the short term. We will be able to really go beyond this stage of crisis. I call it evolution, but whatever it is, it's another opportunity. And COVID in China. China is taking additional measures. How they are dealing with this situation. The measures taken by the industry for the packing and bagging cherries in these pandemics was very positive. We need to improve these measures, but the main will be played at the markets of destination, where the pandemic situation is not under control, so there is a greater uncertainty compared to previous years. So we are in a much more uncertain world, and we need to deal with that by addressing all these issues in a good manner. Yes? I want to point out this. If the Chilean industry changes its perspective, its outlook, that if we continue to see the industry or the potential with what we had 3 or 4 years ago, the potential for growth are much more limited. But if we aspire to get reasonable prices, there is this enormous number of new markets open for us that it won't happen overnight. As the British panelists say, the market in the south of Europe and Spain, they consume an enormous volume of off-season and seasonal products. It takes time to reach this market. We have the potential, but we need to discuss this alternative, not under the lenses expecting $6-7 price to the grower. We change the strategy on a year-to-year basis. No, we readjust. We adjust the way we view the business. There will be a lot of perspective and new angle that are open before us. And considering something that Manuel José said in his presentation about having a scheme of quality may be different for global market. Cristian, I work in the food industry, and we had different segmentation for different clients. In the wine, it was a percentage of well-filled bottled wine with a premium value, and also we have Tetra Pak or cardboard wine, which was for a much lower price, but with enormous volumes. And it is possible there's something like this in our industry, with the challenges that we have to have the independence in the leadership of our industry, not having a single CEO. We should not forget what makes this business successful. The good years, the quality has been very good, excellent quality in the most successful. When we experience problems in the years, in 2 of these recent 6 seasons, the quality was poor, much poor. Sustainability and profitability should be based in quality, assuming that one orchard can provide qualities that are not top of the line or premium, but we need to work commercially in the different markets. but with a lower volume, 80, 20, 70, 30, should be quality-based. It is also true that we need that new segments of the population would have to consume cherries. When you buy cherries for the first time, we buy a more border quality, but this person tasted and liked cherries. This person will go for a higher quality of cherries, because this person will buy cherries to give them as a present at a party. So quality is our own, should be our own driver, and will empower the industry beyond volume. You mentioned promotion, the same that Darren and Manuel José said. Kurt didn't say, but I'm pretty sure that Kurt has an opinion. What was the impact? The impact generated by having cherries at a very low prices that allowed a lot of most consumers to have access to cherries.
We would like to ask you a question. In the past season, due to the COVID situation and everything, there was a huge drop in price that allowed many Chinese consumers to try Chilean cherries for the first time. They were not available. There was not a cherry freedom available for them at that moment. Do we have a bigger base of consumers today? Can you tell us a little bit more of the impact on the positive and maybe on the negative side of this promotion? Unwilling promotion.
Well, you see, China has a population of 1.4 billion. It's a big population, and China has already eliminated the extreme poverty. So I think the cherry is now affordable for most of Chinese. And in the past, because it's a hot item and because it's kind of expensive, because Chinese is a more generous to others than to himself. So when the cherry is a gift, people don't care the price. The more expensive, well, better. It gives me face because I'm giving other people expensive fruit. But when it becomes cheaper, everybody can buy for own consumption. And in China, the cherry already reached first tier city, second tier city, third tier city. But you also need to know there are further smaller cities in China. And if you go down to the county side, China has almost 3,000 counties in China. So still a lot of potential to explore in China. And I think the promotion should keep on doing, not only to rebuild the confidence, but also make the cherry a new tradition for Chinese before the Chinese New Year. And Chinese people, and a lot of Chinese people know Chile because of cherry. So I think maybe it's a good idea for Chile to change your name from Republic of Chile to Republic of Cherry.
Thank you very much, Kurt. Cambiamos un poco el foco y nos
Let's
vamos.
change our focus and let's see the big word that we are listening for many years, but this is the first time that I feel that is a cross union in interest, which is diversification. One of the main learnings and conclusions from the recent or past season. This was not new. In the first Cherry Summit, we were in 2018, we were talking about diversification when 85% of the volume was being exported to China. And then in the following, we're more than double the volume from 2018 to today. But contrary to our logics, we increased export to China in 94%. Let me ask Darren. Para poder ingresar en un mercado,
we need to work maybe on different packaging, etc. The product that we're supplying today to China is what the UK and Europe needs or wants?
Okay. Well, first I'll talk about the packaging. We repack everything in the UK into punnets. So we don't need the fancy red and gold boxes. We're quite happy to take the most basic packaging, the cheapest cost packaging that there is available, because as I said in my presentation, it's a very cost sensitive market. So don't worry about the presentation. Just get the fruit to us in the cheapest possible format. However, it needs to be strong. It needs to be able to make a 30-day voyage. And then as we talk about the quality, yes, I think we're probably now requiring some of what China do. We have customers at the very premium top end of the market that will want the very best, darkest 30mm Cordia and Regina. But we also are targeting the entire UK population. We sell some cherries to the discounter outlets as cheap as £1 for a pack of cherries, which makes cherries affordable for everybody in the UK. So we'll target maybe the L's. So the presentations earlier discussed that, you know, nobody in the world wants the L's. Well, we can take the L's. We don't want too many, but we want them to be able to enter the market for the people that wouldn't normally buy cherries. And as I say, we'll buy the complete range up to the top quality that you would send to China. And we also need to consider that it is now the longest, now you have the cherry vessels to China. It is probably the longest developed market that you're sending your cherries to. You know, it's a very minimum of 30 days, sometimes closer to 40 with some of the delays we've seen in shipping during the past year or two. So yeah, we do need good, strong cherries.
Thank you, Darren. Orieta, como menciona Darren, debemos adaptar el producto.
As Darren mentioned, we must adapt the product. Are we willing to adapt the sizes as exporters and producers? Frusan is very proactive. How is the industry working at the level of producers and exporters to adapt to markets? Last year, that was a very difficult year as a result of COVID. But I think the fundamental problem was quality. The volume of lapin exported by Chile was large, very large. The amount of fruit on trees was very much, and quality was not what the client wanted. So on the one hand, we are blaming COVID, but I think an important part was part of what we introduced in the boxes, and the market did not accept it. So this year, we're working with producers very strongly in trimming, in clearing, to obtain the quality that the market wants. But it was a blow. Well, we needed the blow to realize this. It happens. We learn, but in the hard way, in every stage of life. Manuel José, one of the challenges to increase the volume in the United States will be USA #1 standard. Can you explain what it is and how it affects us, the industry? And is there something we can do at the level, lobby level, or conversations with retailers so they accept a minor standard? As I said in my presentation, the USDA standard for quality standards for all fruit in the case of the cherries dates from 1991, corrects himself. And it's old concepts, and it's thought for an industry that harvests, packs, and 3-5 days, and the fruit is on the shelves. So the probability of the same problems is very much lower because we have 15-20 days for transit before the same happens. What I propose in my presentation is that each one in negotiations with retailers to establish a standard or specification for the main problem of cherries, that's pitting. Obviously, nobody wants rotten fruit. But the main problem of our problem is pitting. And if we want to pack it here because pitting happens more in smaller sizes. In larger fruit, it's less. The idea then is to establish for all fruit and every size, first a definition of pitting. What are we going to consider pitting? I showed 2 examples of fruit. There are many more. I have thousands if you want more pictures. But we can say from here up or more, we consider it pitting, and less, no. On the other hand, to increase somewhat, in the case of USDA, it accepts a maximum of 6% of severe defects. That's a case of pitting. I've seen many retailers have imposed or implemented quality standards for Chilean cherries with a broader ranges than the USDA, more flexible. The proposal is, ideally, this should be something the industry does, and maybe a challenge for the committee, is to make a proposal to the American market saying this is what we propose as standard for Chilean cherries. It's a little bit more difficult, but if we have a base on which conversations of each exporter with the various retailers, we can all use this. It would be more useful, more feasible to obtain than each one struggling with their own retailer. That's what I think. Thank you. Orieta. Darren, in his presentation, mentioned 2 concepts that call my attention much. Virtually zero wholesaler business in UK, and no program, no business. This means that we have to plan differently. We've been focused in China. How feasible do you think it is to build a solid market in a short, medium term? Chile is a specialist in fruit sales. We are dealing with cherries now, but we export many other products that have plans or programs. So in the industry, working with retailers and planning or programs is something inherent. That's not the problem. The problem is to recover the trust of those countries where we have not sent the fruit we've promised to send, or we had a program and did not fulfill it. A promotion, the same programs with retailers, that finally the fruit is not shipped. So we need to recover that trust in the market, and we need to all agree that it's not about a couple of companies, that we all have to grow in all markets, not only the largest. Very, very important, what you said, Orieta. And the coming year, it's like retailers were like, oh, Chileans are coming at some moment, they will need us. And now that we are kneeling, so to say, let's see how they behave. That's the attitude I feel they have. But they're very pragmatic. They're not waiting for an opportunity to, obtain something that is not proper. I don't see that. But it's very important that commitments assumed by the industry as to volumes, what Orieta said is true. Companies said, I will send so much volume, and then the Chinese came with the money and they did not fulfill the commitment with retailers. And that's a problem. Or they sent a fruit that was not the one promised. So everybody knows how things are. So this year is very important because it will be a year to consolidate. We will be testing what happens. And based on that, we will build what comes in the future. I want to ask Darren precisely that, how to build, because
Darren, I would like to ask you another question. You mentioned, and Manuel José also mentioned, that in order to build the market, we will need promotion. And so I would like to ask you, what is the figure you have in mind that Chile will need to invest to launch the cherries again in the UK at a bigger scale and in Europe? And also to reassure the consumers that we will be there in the future?
Okay, so I think the first thing we need to do is separate the UK to Europe because it's a completely different market. The UK is a mature market. Every retailer sells cherries during the Chilean season. whereas in Europe, very, very few sell cherries. So the opportunity in Europe is much larger. However, the product is more known in the UK. So I'll talk about the UK first. So we need to plan promotions well in advance. We need to plan them now. We need to convince the retailers to give us front of store shelf space. So when people walk into the supermarket, they see cherries in front of them. They normally have 2 or 3 different products as you walk into the supermarket. And now's the time to book that space or convince them to give us that space. But to do that, we need absolute commitment from Chile that when you say you're going to ship 2 or 3 containers, if I ask for 3 containers, I've got to get 3 containers, because if I only get 1 or 2, then we won't get that space next year. And that's some of the challenges I've had in the past, where I've needed more fruit and I know that it's gone to China. And then on the other hand, Europe completely underdeveloped. We just need to convince them to actually put cherries there in the first place. I think, as I said, that, some of these big retailers in Europe are selling 1,000 tons a week in their summer season. If we can just get a small percentage of that in the winter, people will go into the store, and if they see the cherries, I'm sure they'll buy them. So it's completely 2 different markets, and I think we need to attack it in a completely different way.
Darren, while I have you there, thank you for sharing those thoughts. Manuel José has a projection of probably 25 million boxes if Chile does everything well, the retailers do everything correctly, etc. How can you elaborate? Can you give us a ballpark figure on how many cherries the 300 million Europeans, keeping the island aside, of course, can eat?
Well, I guess if we use the same sort of theory, that the UK population is basically 10% of the European population. We've built the UK cherry business to 650, 700,000 boxes. Well, if you multiply that by 10, you're up at 6 to 7 million boxes. The key thing to say there, we didn't get to that number in the UK overnight. I've known Orieta for many years, and she supplied me with cherries for more than 20 years. It's taken time to get to those sorts of numbers, and it would take time in Europe. It will be slowly, but it needs support from Chile. It needs support from us. And I believe in 5 to 10 years we can get there, but it will take time.
Thank you. Well, that gives us some figure. Para cerrar
to close this diversification section, one of the aspects that I liked in Kurt's presentation is he mentioned diversification in China. I was so surprised. We can think that with 70 million boxes, everything is covered. I'd like to ask you, what do you mean with diversification? Kurt?
Final question on the China and diversification subject. When you in your presentation you mentioned that China, or that Chile in China should diversify, go to other markets, change the entry point. Can you share a little bit more on that, and how can Chile take advantage of all the Belt and Road investments and initiatives that China has put in place in the last years? And that line, maybe we're not. So can you share and give us an advice of what else we could do in China?
I think the Cherry Express is a great invention. It did help the industry to grow and cut off the transit time. And in the past, we've been using mainly Hong Kong as the port of entry, and then truck through the channel to Shenzhen. But with the season goes on, the vessel has been increased. Now it's in total like 30 vessels, and 25 goes to Hong Kong. And so I think that's too much to Hong Kong, too much. And I think the industry is a little bit too conservative. I think the industry should be bold enough to try other mainland ports, because now the clearance procedure has been different. Hong Kong is no longer so efficient than other ports. Other ports can be also more efficient, and also considering the pandemic, those uncertainties, it's also necessary to put eggs in different baskets, and also consider the fruits will go direct. The whole container go to other cities, not all go to Hong Kong. Not all goes to Guangzhou or Shanghai. The whole container now can go to directly to the second or third tier cities. So you should choose a port accessible and closer to those markets. Maybe this season we can try maybe one vessel or two to the northern port, because there's no vessel go direct to the north.
Qingdao?
Maybe Dalian.
Dalian.
Yeah, further north, maybe one vessel, because that won't be too much risk, because the volume can be absorbed easily.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, and you talk about the Belt Road.
Yes.
The Belt Road is a more a connection for China to the middle to the Asian countries neighboring China in the west side. But all the port for Chile is all in the east coast. But you should be confident with China for the domestic infrastructure. All the highway network is very well established. So once you access to mainland China, you can reach to any place very efficiently. The only challenge is when closer to the new year, the driver may not be willing to work very close to the Chinese New Year.
Kurt,
so maybe
are we doing everything?
Week before the Chinese New Year, there will be a shortage of drivers.
Kurt, are we doing everything we can? Is there other examples of other fruits that we could follow? Is there someone else doing it better in China?
Well, I think a good example is Zespri, the New Zealand kiwi. They've been doing quite well the logistics side, and also the distribution in the China nationwide, because they are only one exporter, so it's more organized. And Chilean cherry is with more players, so it's less organized. So it's different, but if you want an example, Zespri could be example for you to study. Not totally different, but can be studied.
But I remember visiting China, and you could find durian everywhere.
Yeah.
What are they doing differently from us?
Well, they are the neighbor of China. They come to China by truck. So it's like another province of China. So that's totally different. You travel 3 weeks by the sea, right? And also the packing house are mainly operated by Chinese people in Thailand. They are just buying durian from the farmers. So it's like a domestic fruit.
I understand. Thank you, Kurt. Basado en lo mismo y hablando en
on the same and speaking about the neighboring country for the first time ever, we are focusing in different country. Orieta, in India, 1.3 billion people. Just to say, let me clear something that Kurt said before. It's not that we as an industry, we will go only to Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been a very efficient port. This is because the bulk of the volume goes to Hong Kong. In other ports close to the Chinese New Year, the vessels were not handled, so they need to improve. It's not that we want to ship all our fruit to Hong Kong to reach Guangzhou. No. One of the learnings is to work together, absolutely, and that is what Cristian mentioned in his word at the beginning. Joint work communication in a COVID scenario will be key to move forward. Going back to India, okay. Indians, they compare a lot with themselves with Chinese. They say they are in the same way of Chinese growth in these recent times. It is harder It's a much more complicated market. We are logistically more far away. So reaching what we are sending plus apple and kiwi fruit with 6-7 weeks of voyage. Normally it was 5, but due to the pandemics, there are 7 weeks. We need to work to see if we will be able to have vessels, or because the percentage of fruit transported by the vessels is minimal. So these are other products, dry products, move vessels from and to India. So the trading with India that we have with Asia, with China, sorry, maybe it will be favorable for us if we move to the US. Cristian, it is possible to link this with other companies and intra-committee to take advantage of chartered vessels with the grapes. So the ball is on our side. We need to be convinced that we will be able to reach the US with fruit under any circumstances. The vessels of the ship will be there. And Orieta, about India, along with the logistics, there is also the chain of the internal logistics, chain supply is very fragmented. There's a lot of interaction but then fruit is sold at the street. The market share or the share of supermarket is very low, so there is the need of developing the cold chain inside India, so cherries can reach much more consumers. This is a multidimensional challenge before attacking with volume. I like to listen because I see that as a marketer, the marketing needs are in every single market today. And you mentioned middle class in China is much more powerful and rich than the middle classes in India so far. So India needs to have a stronger development so that cherries would be an alternative for everyone in India. Great point. And with that, we close the chapter in China about China and diversification. And let me take you to varieties and quality. We have seen on the presentation that quality will be a key element to be able to open markets. I don't know how much ready are we, Mario, with all that is planted of lapins variety. They explained to me that varieties are like children. Sometimes they behave poorly, sometimes they are not well behaved, like the children. Mario, are not dealing with problems with this girl or boy, the lapins? Lapins is a very noble variety. If you don't take it, you can have much more tones. There's a very tasty, firm, long legs. This is a product that the market needs. But lapins is the largest variety. It's easy to plant. It adapts better to Chile. But this can happen with any other cultivar or variety. What you mentioned, wines. We have icon premium wines and also all the way down to cardboard packet wines. We have super premium, super jumbo, and then you have XL and L about cherries. You have every single quality that are equivalent to wine at a very different prices. So we do not need poor quality, poorly tasting boxes. What we need is to segregate, to sort out our problems in the boxes that they belong to. Along the same line, we have a huge challenge with the Regina variety. We know what the market is looking for and what they don't want. We have over 50 tons per season and growing at 2 digits rate. How can we pick, pack, and ship in less than 40 days? we can handle this, but it's very difficult for us to manage this time because we are dependent on the voyages, the time, the travel. How to maintain 40 days quality in a species that cannot go beyond 35 days. For each variety, the optimum storage time is 30. With technology, we have been able to extend these Regina and Lapins, that are great varieties when well managed. They have problems because with this extended storage, there's logical deterioration and decay. There's a damage in the pulp. But what we can do is to be more efficient in the handling, in the picking, in the harvesting, starting from the orchard, producing better quality fruit, taking care of the fruit during the harvest, and being very efficient at the post-harvest stage with the first tool, which is temperature. We have the know-how. Are we prepared as an industry? Yes. So, yeah, we do have the infrastructure, but the situation makes us having to work with the labor people that are learning the job. So we need to train this labor more so that they have a more efficient management. But we have the technology and the knowledge in Chile, and we have a wide variety of very good fruit. You mentioned labor. Labor is a big issue today, which is one of the challenges that we have as an industry. But in what we are proposing about opening new markets, developing new market, we also address the topic of quality, but not the condition of seasonal workers. What effect do they have on the fruit? What impact they have? Seasonal workers in the harvest is a huge impact because this species is very sensitive to the damage claimed by the U.S. pitting or mechanical damage. It is a very sensitive species. So if the harvest operation is not careful, workers do have a significant role and impact. And this, considering the shortage of labor, not only in quantity, but also when we receive people, because we look in different places, sometimes because of volume and the complexities of the harvest in time, quantity and intensity. Sometimes we do not train very well our new labor force for the harvest. Is training? Only training? And yes, we do have the teams, we do have the knowledge and equipment. We need to be better organized or arrange our labor differently to the way we do with good training. Yes, we are be able. So the $1 million question to Orieta, in which part of the production curve you see better estimate or more room to grow, early or late? Good question. I think it is not late or early, but both. In the peak weeks of the season, 51, 52, or 50, everything is so concentrated with Lapins and Regina and Sweetheart that we need to go to the ends. More than being late or early is about the variety. We need to look for the correct early and late variety, and we are working with different programs. We are testing, so we need to look for the proper variety. And also we have the packing capacity for the early and late fruit. And late, as Manuel José mentioned, the arriving to St. Valentine's Day would be key. It's an additional incentive, aside from what it already existed, to reach China at an earlier time. The National Society of Agriculture said in an interview that according to the International Institute of Statistics, there was 156 million people with less employed than in the same quarter of 2019, which was the last normal year, which is mainly explained by less availability of workers. In this context, labor it's much more expensive and has generated pressure for informal contracting. Orieta, one of the greatest challenges in this season will be labor, or one of the most important. How are large exporters preparing themselves? The challenge, we already have the problem this season, not only in cherries, but also in the rest of products. We have had a very difficult year. It has been difficult to find people to harvest or for the field and for the packing. So first we see the worker will be looking for stability, and for stability they will look for exporters that will provide job in a longer period. In this context, exporters with great volume will be in a better position than smaller exporters. Secondly, we have all the work at the field level. During the cherry season, the field is paying more than the packing. So there is some fight or tension on how the field is removing people from the packing.
The Minister of Agriculture is saying that at some moment the borders will be open to bring labor from abroad, but it will not be this season. We're far, where our frontiers are still closed, our borders. If we don't have tourism, less will we have labor. So we face a challenge, but we must be prepared. I like your optimism. And something that is not minor is automation. We're automating. No, at the field level, that's by far. But since we will have more people on the field and less in the packing, we are looking at automation of the packing, automation. And the solution will not be easy. Yeah, from here in Santiago, loyalty, it's complex in the scenario we've had with the social breakthrough and then the pandemic. Yes, it's an option, what Orieta said. Producers, for harvesting, they have the possibility of increasing wages, but that also has a limit. That is not sustainable. And changing all the people also has a cost. And what we have seen is that to produce cherry, we will need some other species before and after, so that people have a longer period of working on the field. It's not only the cherry harvest, that's 1 or 1.5 months on each farm, but then for the same people to have the possibility to continue February and March working with us with other species that maybe are not that profitable, but will give us a continuity with the people we need. And this is a very intense season. Cristian, in following the same line of thought, in New Zealand, you hear about all these people who are backpackers and go to different countries to harvest fruit. Not in Australia. Is there something we can do following that line? An incentive through the Ministry of Education? We have students here that are with the vacations from December to March. Is there something we could do? Yes. Orieta mentioned it somehow. For months, we have a panel that's working, that is exporters working with ASOEX in migration and foreign people to generate flexible income visas for migrants that allow them to come in multiple times with the condition of their working at least 6 months a year. That would be like what you're saying of extending work in farms, and so migrants can come in and go and leave then. And this would be a 5-year visa as long as agricultural sector gives them, employs them. There's a goodwill to approve it. We don't know if it will be ready for this season. Also, we have vaccines problems, and where will they have their quarantine? And so there are some things to solve, but that's a concrete proposal for coming years to make this more flexible migration. It's part of the strategy you're working in the committee. We have talked about this internally. When schools close or universities, we have a lot of people, young people that work in the harvesting. They make good money for vacations. So it's almost a solution from here on that universities and schools should close before. It's part of what to teach young people to go and work in the farms in good conditions with good wages, and thus we solve many problems at the same time. Yes, it's an opportunity, and that's my question. It's that way. I think that initiative will be at the company level, and maybe later some more massive thing. Following the challenges, Jorge Navarrete, General Manager of CMPC Biopackaging, in an interview, alerted the industry of lack of boxes. He says, we have much more demand with the global e-commerce. Chile depends on imports. About 40% of our cardboard is imported, and that has been difficult. Cristian, how to face a lack of boxes in the period where the cherry industry needs it more? This is a scenario that all exporters know and have known for a time. I have no doubt that we all have been preparing to anticipate the deliveries as much as possible, because we require 50% more boxes for the same installed capacity of the cardboard factories. That's impossible. So we need to import, and we've already with plans to buy in a different way to have the supplies. And Mario, following the same line of what Cristian said, not only will we have a shortage of boxes, but also we heard about lack of containers or shortage of containers, and freight will increase its prices very much. What do you think about this? How will this affect air freight, the Cherry Express? Is there anything the industry should do or that it's doing and I don't know about it? The industry will need for cherries more than 24,000 containers. We expect a higher freight cost. Let's hope they're not that important. What's positive, Gustavo, is that the Cherry Express has been a very good business for everybody, for maritime companies, for customers, and we have the hope that as it has been a good business, they will have the good containers, because it's not only about having all containers, but good containers that are up to date, let's say, or upgraded. And with that, they should be already, shipping lines already should be bringing in containers. As far as I know, they're not bringing them from China, but rather from the United States for repacking, because freight from Asia is very, very expensive. So it's more convenient to bring those with dry containers than with empty refrigerators. For them, it's been a good business, so they should have and worry about be concerned about having all of them available. We still need to confirm some, but we hope it's a transition season that is with the least difficulty. Manuel, José, just a second. As Mario said, apart from the challenge of containers, also we have a logistical, domestic logistics has a deficit. Truck drivers, we have a deficit. There are about a deficit of 10,000 drivers, not only in China. not only in Chile, yes. So this will be a challenge, a domestic challenge, less availability of drivers that have left or stopped working because of state bonuses, but also they have gone to other industries like Uber, the last mile, rapid Uber. So we will face a challenge, an important challenge, maybe longer periods for delivery and container movement, or when picking the cherries. So that's another element we must face, and I call all transporters associations to become sensitive and promote policies that foster the hiring of more drivers, because that will be critical. Thank you. Manuel José, you mentioned not to repack in the United States as a recommendation, given the volumes. And this mentions a scarcity or shortage in process. What do you think of that scenario for Chile? We were quite tight last season. Do you have any opinion? Look, the thing is, as I said, repacking has two costs. One is the cost of doing it, monetary cost per box, and second, the loss of fruit when repacking. A good process should result in 3 or 5%, but people is also satisfied if 10%. If we sell at 30 the box, we're selling at 27, because the other costs are all fruit that are being dumped in destination. But there's some tricky element there, because you can obtain some money for that 10% of fruit. There is a secondary market where you can obtain 2 maybe. And so the recommendation is that for all those varieties, conditions, sizes, that we can put them in clamshells or bags, whatever final packing. My suggestion is to do this in Chile. But it's also a packing that packers here are not very happy to do, because it's much easier to put 5 kilos in a box. Nobody touches the boxes, nobody does anything. So to go through that fruit, to put them in bags, it's complex. I think it's difficult because of the layout in plants in the United States, or the willingness of those plants in the United States of those packings is low. Freddy, Lucas, that are gigantic, avoid repacking of cherries. They don't like to provide that service. So on that side, I think it's complex, and my recommendation and suggestion is let's try to do things here and well. So we need good fruit. The only reason for which we repack it at destination is because the bag or the clamshell infers more pitting to the fruit than if by batch. But if we start with good fruit, big, good size, and more firm, that pitting will be less, or be less pitting at destination. Thank you. Now, about what Manuel José said, Jessica. In coming years, we should pack between 25,000 daily tons of cherries in the peak period, obviously. And that's where we've have not been able to do so in the past seasons. Are we developing new types of packing or packages that are sustainable and allow us to sustain this increasing volume for packing and putting into bags? Let's see. Doctora Daza, the sustainable involves several aspects. I will try. I thought you would give the question to Cristian. Sustainability, on the one hand, has this environmental connotation of natural resources, where, yes, maybe in going to other markets, that will be a demand, something we have to fulfill, and we all know that. And there the industry must progress. We maybe have not introduced more sustainable materials because of the cost, because that's an industry that is starting with a higher cost, but it's there. We have how to change. And that's the environmental idea. Also sustainability, productive sustainability, be able to solve the bottleneck. And this has been faced in two ways. One with automation, and their lines today, we have process capacity. The first obstacle was weighing. Now we have the technology. We're investing little by little because it's an expensive technology. So we have been able, lines can start quickly. We can implement the system more, but then the next stage is sealing. Sealing is an operation that today, in spite of its advance for our volumes, is slow. And it requires labor. And as Orieta said, we can start to economize labor in this packaging operation because we know the harvest is much more complex. So we have to leave labor for the other sector.
And in one single industry, has in this year, our industry this year is proposing system of automatic sealing, and I think it will work very well, but we need our consumers to accept also the changes. That is the more complex gap, the uncertainty. Because technology is here, it will operate, I'm 100% sure, but our consumers must accept this little variant. Or maybe Gustavo, I think is important. Taking Jessica and Darren also dealt with that at the end of his presentation, that food safety issue. In the case of China, it's very far, and the standards are totally different than the US and European standards, especially with the FISMA law. So diversification that we are promoting and these ideas that we are discussing should stress this part. We need to reach with fruit into the US. It will require global gap certification, PCR at the plants, FESMA treatment in the I am not very familiar in China how many orchards exporting to China really have global gap certification, but considering the low level of requirement, it's not very much. So this is one main challenge. Thank you very much. We're going to close this discussion panel, and my last question for Cristian. Something that are at the crossroad or a very complex situation. On the one side, growers ask for the greatest return, and this is why we are focusing in China. This is our business. But today we need to diversify, and diversifying in the discussion and presentation is not, it is expensive and requires time, and growers understand that opening to new markets will translate into decreased returns, even from China. Yeah. It was already discussed. I'm fully aware, and I have seen the growers are trimming seriously, are adjusting the loads. We don't want to repeat the overproduction phenomena. So without any doubt, they will be serious, and they are going to produce good quality fruit. Not with border quality. The only thing that we have seen that they not make profitable the cost of producing, packing, and harvesting it. And very positive about that. There is an appetite to run less risk to the detriment of lower return. I'm convinced that we will be diversifying. It's not an overnight change. It will take time. It's a way that we will have to go for many, many years. We need to do this with conviction and with patience, and we will achieve it. The closing word, as an industry, it's very easy to make mistake. A bad decision can impact in many people or all of them. Oscar Wilde said that experience is the name we give to our mistakes. And I am very happy to see that we have been able to learn from our mistakes and that we are working together, all the different actors, stakeholders, consultants, growers, exporters, etc., in order to make the industry grow and not blaming people, as Kurt said, but working together. I want to thank each one of you for your time. You arrived here very early in the morning, so thank you very much for coming. I want to thank Kurt and Darren
for
Gracias,
participating.
Kurt
Kurt está en medio de la noche en China.
Kurt
Así
is in
que
the middle of the night in China.
thank you very much, my
Muchísimas gracias.
And Darren, also thank you very much,
Darren,
my new
también,
friend.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Good to see you.
Antes,
Bye-bye.
bye bye. Antes de cerrar esto,
Before
deseamos
closing, we want to mention UCC, ARM, CMPC, Tomba, Fresh Food, Global Reefers, GP Graders, Banco de Chile, Multiscan, IFG, MAV Roda, Utilitas, and Unitec that have sponsored this part of the meeting. Thank you very much, and we look forward to meeting you in 2022.